Hello, and welcome to Somewhat Damaged. Don't worry, you're in the right place. I'm still your host, Greg Alperin, and while the name may have changed, the unhinged and unfiltered comedy stays the same. Sit back, relax, and listen to the hot and fresh new episode. Buckle up.
What up, guys?
What's up, John? How are you?
Good, man. Good to see you. How are you? Everything's good?
I'm good. I'm good. You look so much calmer. We met very briefly in LA. The first night you were doing sort of a show in COVID procedures at the restaurant on Santa Monica.
Yeah, that's right.
My heart just went. My heart went out to you because I'm like, this poor fucking guy has flown from the East Coast and is learning the difference between New York and LA. But it was this fascinating thing of it like encapsulated everything that is different about the two cities. And it is this. New York City is still a bit of the like, there are rules. We are the cops. By the way, these are the rules you have to follow, and these are the ones we don't. Like, we're the NYPD. Like, we have actual crime. And then you come to LA, and it's like, we are the LAPD. We are an occupying force. Your shoes are untied. There's a fine for that. And you're like, wait, no, like, and it was like watching it in real time. And it was this thing of like, we couldn't explain it to John. No one was aware of it, but like literally like it went from like this fun vibe show. And then you'd like peek in the corner and like John is like stress smoking and the police are like, we know it's not a protest. We know it's not a protest. And
then... John is dead fucking on, man.
Yeah.
It is funny. It is true about LA cops because when I was a teenager or maybe early 20s, I got an actual ticket in Westwood on UCLA campus for jaywalking, right? And like I'm from the city and I never crossed in my life at a crosswalk on time. And then this cop was like, calls me over and I'm like, oh man, what's this about? And he was like, I'm gonna give you a ticket for jaywalking. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought he was fucking with me. And he's like, can I see your license, please? And I'm like, my license for what? Like, do you need a walking license in Los Angeles? Like, what are you talking about? And he literally was like, don't be a wise guy, take the ticket and just go away. What's your name? Give me your license. And I was like, okay.
Hannibal Buress has that great bit about walking through Montreal and getting the jaywalking ticket. And he's like, just take your funny money. it's out of control. But yeah, LA definitely has that vibe. It's like, like usually with NYPD, it's like we did a show outside May 30th of last year. And the cops are like, hey, you can't be doing this kind of deal. Let's wrap it up within the next 35 minutes. And we're like, an hour? They're like, we'll be getting breaks. So yeah, sure. And then here it's like, dude, like, why can't we have the speaker? Just like, well, and then literally the guy has the book out and he's about to like show me like actual statute. All right. This is out of control. Next week, we went to fucking headphones. We're like, fuck this noise. I'm not dealing with this anymore.
It's like, it's so living in LA makes you understand every Black Flag song. Like you just get punk rock from the 80s because you're just like, oh, no wonder you guys are so angry. Because this is the thing I always think about because they are intense. Like, and I've just had it on like, I don't drive in LA. Like I have a license. I just don't like driving. So I took public transport before COVID, and you see the cops down there all the time. And it's such a difference of like the NYPD cops are exactly that of like, hey, what's a murder? Like, don't worry about it. And it's actually calm. Like I find the NYPD relatively calming. Like it's a dude named Mike. He's from Nassau County. We can talk about hockey. Like, yeah. I don't know where they're fine. The LAPD guys all look like they're on steroids. Their haircut is too short. And they are like, aggressive. And just like, you're like, you understand why people get agitated with you is because you guys are literally like, you're meeting honey with bullets. Like, just kill the fuck out.
It is true. Like everything about the LA, like from the colors of the police cars, like in New York, the cars are like a nice sky blue and they're white. It's like it's not aggressively intimidating.
Oh, dude. And it was it was the craziest when the Black Lives Matter protests were happening this time last year. And the LAPD just kind of went, I don't like these families walking down the street. let's do some attacking. That was the craziest thing because they activated every LAPD officer on a Saturday night, and you don't know how many cops are in LA until they're all on the streets, and you live in the neighborhood that's between the two riots, and you're like, oh my God, like there's just so many more. Like, how many police do we need? Because we've got all of them. Like, oh.
Well, anyway,
and I hate to go back to like other comedian bits, but Bobby Kelly has that bit about the guy who has to put on riot gear for the first time in 10 years, and it's like, and like he's sticking out like a sausage almost, and it's one of the most visual bits. He actually did it on Fallon, but I saw the amount of cops that came through Los Angeles, and it's literally like I had a cousin of mine he said, I had no idea that my next door neighbor was a police officer. Smoked with him all the time. He was a police officer. They just activated people, and they were just like, hey, we need you on the streets right now. Even auxiliary guys were given like what they call pepper bullets and everything. It was like, what the hell is going on? But Greg, did you press record?
No, I did like an hour ago. So what I was gonna do was say, in typical us fashion, we just kind of went right into it, didn't do an intro, didn't do anything. So for everyone who's listening, we're talking to the John Hastings. Just want to make sure everyone knows who we're talking to.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be a part of this. We like all the podcasts I appear on. We immediately start with a dissection of the local police departments and wherever we're broadcasting from, and then we move on to other fun topics.
Yeah, let's talk Israel and Gaza Strip next, guys.
Oh yeah,
you want to do that?
Let's get into that exciting topic. I can already feel that I'm texting with my parents, and we all know we're just avoiding discussing it because we all have different opinions, and we all like each other, and we don't want to get into it.
It's funny. Not that it's funny. I had to go to a Shiva last night, and
Jesus, Greg, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, here we go.
No. This is I
didn't realize I was on Compound Media. Am I right, guys? Huh? You like that?
Let the good times roll. So not only was it just like a Shiva, it was an Orthodox Shiva, right? So, and I may be Jewish, but I am the least religious person you'll ever meet in your life. So, they give everyone the book, and you're reading from the book, and I am from the jump lost. But the elephant in the room was the Israel-Palestine conversation that nobody, like, a bunch of Orthodox Jews, like the rabbis and some of the relatives, and then, all the regular Jews over here. And, you can just tell that the conversation was about to start, and then nobody wanted to start it.
Mm-hmm.
So they started touching on it, and I just went outside. I'm like, I'm not.
I just want to see one kid came back from his classes at Cornell, and it was like Jewish occupying state of Palestine, and just all over Bubby's Shiva, just completely.
Bubby would have gotten out of the ground and been like, "Listen up, Avi. I don't care what they tell you at that Goyim school. All right."
I didn't spend my hard-earned money for you to learn about Palestine at Cornell. You know what? Join the army. Join the army.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Shiva, of everything the Jewish community has given us, and they've given us so much. Kugel, you could have stopped there. Shiva, best way to mourn someone's death in like a weird way, because it gives a schedule to the whole. You're like, you got a week, get it done, get out. Like,
I'll tell you who invented it is grandmothers who didn't want to have people have excuses not to come by. Like, if it's you have like a Catholic funeral and the wake and all that, it's like one day, if you have an excuse, you kind of can miss it, but you're not missing a 4 or 5 day Shiva. Like unless you're out of town, and then that's not even an excuse.
Yeah. Oh no. And also, by the way, I guess we've gone to very different Catholic wakes. There is no excuse to miss good luck. Like, you could try. Both of my legs were shot off by an assassin. Well, there's hospitals in this city, so I guess you can make it.
No, I agree with you. I mean, listen, but the great thing is about Catholic wakes and Catholic funerals is that, especially if it's like Irish or Italian, is a lot of good food and a lot of good drink with those.
What's interesting about the sort of Catholic sex, and I think it was intentional, which is the Irish get painted with the boozy of the Irish Catholic, but you go to an Italian wedding or funeral, bring a helmet, because it's gonna get crazy.
Absolutely. That's definitely what you you need. You need like 3 days to recover from it.
Everyone is gesturing like Sebastian Maniscalco. There's like blood feuds that go back 2 generations. Someone's threatening to get put. I used to do a lot of catering, and I remember it wasn't even like it was a memorial, so it wasn't even a funeral. It was like someone had died, and they were like doing like a sort of remembrance after, because not everyone could make it. And I like out of a movie, I heard someone with that low voice being like, "How about I put you in the ground? You can join me." And I was just like, stereotypes aren't real, but sometimes they're very close.
But they're hilarious, aren't they?
John,
oh God, nobody shows this to Jake Flores. He'll freak out on me.
Did I ever tell you, John, or both of you, Johns, that I was on a flight to Las Vegas like 10 years ago. I was going to UFC 100, right? And I'm from New York to LA. I mean, not to Vegas, with one of my buddies who is a manager for one of the fighters. And we're on the flight, and he looks to me and he goes, "Oh, by the way, we have to go to a funeral tomorrow." Right? And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he mentioned this person whose father had passed. Right? So I'm like, why do I have to go to his funeral? And he's like, "Well, he's the guy that built the booth. He's doing all this stuff for us." I'm like, "You mean the guy that I've been talking to every day's dad just died, and now I'm going to show up in Las Vegas and have to go to this guy's funeral?" He's like, "Yes." So we rented a yellow Corvette to drive to this guy's funeral. Have you ever been to a funeral in Las Vegas?
No, but I assume there's slot machines in the chapel.
Basically, there is. So this was one of the weirdest things I've ever gone to. They don't bury people.
Was it weird that in the middle of someone's eulogy you could actually hear a
million people yelling "Hard 8, Hard 8."
Yeah.
So we pull, and they don't bury people in the ground in the desert. They're all above ground, right? So yeah, no burial. They're all like above ground. Yeah. So
because it's all sand. Of course they are, because it would just be, let's just put this body in the sand and wait for the wind, and then the
wind to blow, and then blow all the bodies around. So they're in these giant mausoleums, and so we pull into this funeral, and I'm like, we're pulling in a yellow Corvette convertible, like clearly we're gonna get looked at. No, half of the people.
Was the Corvette like, okay, we land, all right, yeah, we're going to a funeral, but it's still Vegas, let's not fuck around? Or was it like, let's bring some levity to this, let's get the yellow Corvette? Like, was the yellow Corvette connected to the funeral?
Yes, solely because of the funeral. So we decided we needed a car to go to the funeral. So we tried to get like a Ferrari or something, and we couldn't because it was UFC 100. Every exotic car was gone.
Oh yeah.
So we wound up with the yellow Corvette convertible. So we roll into this casino funeral home, and unbeknownst to us, right? The guy's father was a union guy that owned like a trade show shop, right? So all of the people that were at this funeral, besides like the 10 relatives, were like Hell's Angels bikers on like
I was about to say, like, I just, not to besmirch your friend, but someone that's involved in unions in Las Vegas is old enough to be a father of someone that died. I'm like, he has some friends that are in some fraternal organizations.
Oh, it was hysterical. So it's this, and the guy was in the Navy. So it was like a bunch of Navy, like, veterans. They had an Irish band that was singing U2 songs, right? And then hysterical. And then a bugle corps doing like the Navy hymns and stuff. And all Hell's Angels, like bikers. It was the fucking wackiest thing you ever saw in your life. And then at the end, it was like they just threw this massive party.
I mean, this sounds so fun, but already, and this is, again, I'm like relatively new to America. I've lived here just under 2 years, but mostly Corona, so most I was inside. But America, and this, I love it, is there is no irony in like mainstream people decisions. There is no shame or concern. The idea that you have 2 bands playing concurrently, both loud music, and in my picturing in the same room.
Yes. Yep.
So of course, why would we need a bugle band? We need a U2 cover band. Do you have 2 rooms? They will be playing at the same fucking time, I'll have you know. Now, yeah, let's go get some motorcyclists, because Lord knows those machines are loud. All of that happening at the same time. Make a brisket. Like, you go to like anything like that in Europe, and it's like one sandwich that's wet and no one's talking and it's cold. And then you come to America, and like, I'm sure there's a t-shirt gun at the funeral, and like there's like flame cannons, like the wrestler Kane came in the ring.
Yeah.
It's just like
Hey, that's a perfect segue, actually perfect segue to your wrestling podcast.
Bring
which,
it on.
Which I know John and certainly me definitely want to talk about, because we're huge wrestling fans and fanatics going years and years and years.
It's quite the time we're living through.
Yeah. I'm just, well, my question first on your podcast is, where did you like get the love of wrestling? From a little kid?
From when I was like 8. Like, it's also that weird thing of Canada. I'm Canadian, and also wrestling is one of the only this is a weird thing to say, but in the 80s and 90s, because we got all of our media from America, when you're a kid, no one mentioned the country I lived in. Like, no one said Canada ever on television unless you're watching wrestling, and then they would be like, Canada has given us all these good it's a weird thing, but that's part of it. It's like it was a place to be associated with actual Canada, and here it's on television, and it's cool, you know what I mean? It's a guy in pink. Like, for me, it was Bret Hart was sort of my first big era when he was the champion, so early 90s. And I was actually more of an Owen Hart guy, but that was sort of the first time I got into it. And it's kind of just, it's my football, you know what I mean? Like, I keep an eye on it. I'm not really following it right now, but I can get back in it in 2 seconds. Like, I'm just like,
well, that's the thing though, John. I mean, listen, in the last year and a half, wrestling has kind of come back to the wars. You get this new brand of AEW. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot out there, because there's New Japan, obviously. There's a bunch of new Major League Wrestling as well. But obviously now we got these two kind of main players. But you know what's funny is in the comment threads, I always see the pro AEW and then the pro NXTers and the pro WWEers. Like, where do you fall on that?
I'm a real wrestling slut. In that I kind of just watch all of it. I have a lot. Here's my thing: is I have huge ethical problems with watching the WWE sometimes, because sometimes it's just like, this fucking stop doing these things. This is making it. But I always get over
breaking
it.
up the Hurt Business was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, just, how can you treat Daniel Bryan that way? But
he's going to NXT though. Definitely going to go to NXT. I'm calling it.
You think he's going to NXT?
I'm calling NXT, and the forbidden door is going to be blown open with something. Maybe I think it's probably going to be like Major League Wrestling or something along those lines. But it would be interesting to see. Once that does well, I think Vince will come around. And listen, these are pipe dreams, obviously, but I think it's going to happen. I think within our lifetime, the next 5 years, watch a super card on WrestleMania.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think we're going to get him working with AEW, but I wouldn't be surprised if he MLW and ROH, because I think that they see that they need to be more inclusive to other people within the industry, and it will give them some good PR. Also, Vince McMahon's going to die within the next 5 to 10 years.
I think he's ready, to be honest.
Oh my God. Well, some of the decisions they've made over COVID, like to furlough all those people when you could see, this is such deep knowledge, but like, long and short of, for everyone listening, the WWE at the beginning of COVID is a live events company. They went, we are not going to be making the money we thought. All of these people furloughed. They then cut a bunch of deals and adapted so well and so quickly and got declared an essential service. They never missed job one, to the point that last year was super profitable, and they published that and still kept laying off people. And you're just like, this guy's an evil. And then you look at AEW and you're just like, this product is not as engaging as I want it to be at times. And the decisions you're making in some areas, I'm just like, also, I don't like how Bernie bro people who like AEW can get. Like, they're like, well, you don't love the best friends. And you're like, no, they're fine, but like, I don't understand why I have to like all of their matches drag a little bit. Like, Orange Cassidy's very exciting, but like,
I like Orange.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think it's
Darby Allin last night put on a spectacular match with Miro. I thought, I thought it was really good.
Oh,
there are these little moments that they do that AEW does so well, and like, I call them these moments because like there's this great moment where Sting and Darby Allin kind of gave each other a fist pound, and it was like this moment that like it was like, yeah, this is going down. Like simple. This I can harken this back to when like the Revival when they were up against DIY, and they grabbed each other's hands when they were both in the submission being submitted. Those are these moments that keeps me coming back to wrestling. And sometimes it does suck because I do hear about that. I hear about this shit like the furloughs, the Black Tuesday or Black Mondays where they just fired everybody. What does that hold you? I mean, do you still watch does that make us, less moral people?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of come down on it. We're one of those things where it's just like, I don't buy WWE merch. I jump into wrestling. The other problem is that it's part of my, this sounds very arrogant and weird, but it's part of my job at this point. Like, we've been doing that podcast for so long and we have a really nice, small, incredibly loyal and supportive audience. So it's also that thing of now it's like, I don't agree with everything WWE is doing, but I kind of need to keep my toe in for professional reasons. And it's one of those things. Yeah. Like, that's where I come down on it.
If they asked you, I mean, listen, network is growing. They've brought on people like, Sam's now on the WWE network, Roberts. You get people like what's his face, the old football player on NXT on Friday Night SmackDown right now.
Oh, bums.
Anyway, yeah, they're doing a lot of cross promotion stuff.
Yeah, I know where your question is going. I have no idea. It would be such a hard, like, that would be, because that's like dream, like, you get to open the television and be in the television job. Like, I'd be like, that would be
Bleacher Report reporters have gone over there. Like,
yeah.
I mean, do you go for the money? Do you stand there and chill in front of, a green screen in Stamford, Connecticut, knowing what's happening? And I'm not looking for an answer, but I'm sure it's something
it's something I have thought about, because I'm like, I don't know. Because I also wrestle with AEW, like, of the idea, because I think, and not for me, but I think what AEW's problem is, and AEW is much fixable, is AEW just needs to bring in producers. They need to bring in actual guys that go, no, we're not doing that. I know you're a wrestler and you're friends with that. Like, the buck stops here, and no, you don't get to do that because we're doing this, and we're thinking not 3 steps, we're thinking 20 steps ahead. Here is our plan. No, we're not pretending to do a death match. That's stupid, because we're not going to be able to do it. Because we're not in Japan in the 90s when you were allowed to almost kill Terry Funk. There was a weird time. Japanese parliament passed it. Yeah, no, you weren't allowed to kill him, but you were allowed to almost kill him. Like, it was a very.
You could brand him with his branding iron. He's fine.
Yeah, you can brand him with his branding iron. You can just stab him in the arm with a fork, which is the weirdest. I don't remember. I think it's Abdullah the Butcher did it, but it's the weirdest. Because it's the most unnecessary thing, because he just grabs his arm and then just stabs it with a fork, and you're like, what? Oh, no, that's not, this is no kayfabe, and that you just stabbed a guy.
Is there another thing, though, that you could see? I mean, listen, with Peacock and the NBC kind of deal, we've seen things with A&E Biography, and I think Dan St. Germain worked on a couple of things there. Soder was just on the Macho Man Randy Savage special. Is there something else that you and let's take also the Vice's show, Beyond the Mat? I mean, Dark Side of the Ring. I mean, Chris Gethard's involved in that. Is that something more that you would probably want to go towards instead of actually going to a specific brand at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things. I would love to write for all things being equal, I would love to write for the WWE for a year, just to have that experience, know what it's like. You know what I mean? If you're in show business, you might as well see how your favorite things are made. But it's one of those things where at the same time, like, you guys are all in comedy and do a bunch of stuff that were things you used to love. Like, I used to be a stand-up comedy fan before I was a stand-up comedian. And it's not that it's ruined it, but it really changes your relationship with it. And as I feel that's sort of the same way with wrestling, because it's sort of that thing of, I have a podcast and it's much harder for me to watch it now. If I'm working on it, it would be impossible. And it's one of those things where like I'm Twitch streaming now, so that's kind of ruined video games. And it's like, Can I just stop turning my hobbies into jobs? Because pretty soon I'm going to be doing my taxes to relax, and that will be awful.
So how do you compare like the current wrestling to the wrestling of the 80s and 90s? Like, what do you, as far, I mean, it's gotten to be much more, in my eyes, entertainment based than what it was. Like, back in the 80s, 90s, you had Piper's Pit and some of this other stuff, but you didn't have these like long drawn out, Backstage and all of that.
The actual in-ring, and like the in-ring match quality is so much better. The wrestlers are so much safer. The actual, but like how crazy it was and how interesting it was is down because it was also like I was a teenager during the Attitude Era and when ECW was a thing.
Yeah.
And when WCW, like it was crazy, like amazingly good. And ECW especially was so interesting because you just heard about it. You know what I mean? Like it was this underground, which doesn't exist anymore because we have the internet. But you literally, like, I don't know how you guys, but it's like you'd get one magazine or someone would get a tape that was traded 10 things down the line, or like you'd see a photo and it's like literally like the photo is of like, you know, Bret Hart's in a wheelchair and then this the NWO and then you see ECW and it's literally like Tommy Dreamer's on fire giving a promo and you're like, I want to watch
PWI would pick up this picture and you're like, I want to watch that.
Yeah.
I had the luxury of living in New York City. Well, I lived in Jersey. So we had the Paul Heyman used to talk about that 12 a.m. slot on MSG Network that I used to be on Saturday nights. I remember watching and just like staying up and watching ECW, watching Tommy Dreamer get belted, you know, and please, sir, may I have another? Do you know what I mean? Those unprotected chair shots, like Jesus, like we've come a long way from fucking rest holds, you know, for 25 minutes.
Yeah, like and that's the thing that's amazing. That's what is like, and then wrestling is on the other side of that, where it's still not rest holds, but they can't do that intent. Like it was the last time watching wrestling where you kind of knew that was like you knew it wasn't real,
right?
But it might be like it was the last time where you could be like Mick Foley being thrown off the cage. They always talk about why that's iconic. The reason why that's iconic is the situation between the Undertaker and Mankind was such that you could, as a fan, go, it is possible that wasn't supposed to happen, and it is possible he may have actually tried to kill that guy. Like there's for 1 second, and that will never happen again in wrestling.
You know, there was that point, and I can't pinpoint it because I've watched wrestling, you know, since the 80s, right? And my father was a sports agent and happened to represent a whole bunch of football players that would wrestle in the off season before football players got paid billions of dollars. And I can't remember when it turned from acknowledging that it was entertainment and the wrestling wasn't real to when wrestlers in the 70s and 80s would never admit that, right? So my dad's best friend, my dad's long deceased, but his best friend is still alive and was a professional wrestler in the Florida wrestling leagues in the 70s and 80s when they had all these scattered leagues across the country, mainly the southeast, southwest, northeast. And if I said to him today, and I'm like, just admit that wrestling was fake when you were a wrestler, he would pick me up by my ankles and drop me on my head and then ask me if that was real. And that's a true story. He would do that. And he did it on an interview back in like the 80s when interviewer, like a late show night.
First of all, you said the F word, which you're never supposed to say.
Yeah.
It's never supposed to say
predetermined. Sorry. Even if you talk to wrestlers now, they will be like, it's not that.
Well, you know what I mean when I say fake.
Yeah. We're blessed.
I'm offended. I'm fucking offended, Gregory.
Yeah, he's about to kick himself from the Zoom.
Well, okay. The end result wasn't predetermined. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me.
I know exactly when it happened. Actually, John, do you know the date or when it actually happened?
I know the date. I know what happened.
Like, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there's a couple. But the main one is Vince McMahon wanted to stop paying sports commissions and taxes for it being an athletic content, and I gotta hit. Credit to him. He went to I think it was the New Jersey Tax Board is where he first did it and went, it's not real. It's fake. It's fake. I'm not paying these taxes, and proved it. And by the way, to rub salt in the wound, in 1997, he then gave that governor a fake award at SummerSlam, clearly as a like, no,
I don't know
everyone.
My memory is so bad.
It's so weird that he does that, but yeah, and it shows just what kind of psycho he is. But yeah, no, it was in New Jersey.
Covering wrestling, like having a wrestling podcast, have you ever been able to go backstage at a wrestling event to like see them get their, coordinate?
No, because it's a weird sort of show that we kind of are mostly reviewing retired wrestlers or old wrestlers. So we did a year of Vince McMahon, was sort of our biggest sort of thing. For all of 2020, we talked about Vince McMahon for 52 weeks and it nearly destroyed us. So it's not keeping up with current. The other thing was it was started long enough ago that there were no wrestling podcasts that were trying to be funny about it. Like they were trying to not embrace the weirdness, the stupidness, the evilness of it, the bizarreness. So it became that sort of thing. Like it's much more less about sort of the minutia, more about the lore, more about weird characters and stuff like that. Like, you listen to our podcast and you're coming out of the cold, you'd be convinced Mean Gene Okerlund is the most successful serial killer in the history of the United States. Like a bunch of, like, Vince McMahon is essentially just a man who's shitting all the time and has no business acumen. Triple H is just like, it's just very sort of base, silly, goofy humor about in the wrestling world. And then we give some information, like we have a researcher, and that poor guy gives us like 10 pages of really good real research stuff.
You just fucking throw it all away.
And then it's, we're yelling about Buck Zumoff. I'm accusing Jerry Lawler of a variety of crimes. Like,
come on, a lot of those are stemmed in real.
Both of them are totally stemmed in real. Like, it's one of those things where it's like I've had moments. It's that weird of like, because and I always am like, have I said anything that I don't stand behind? I'm like, I've said some stuff that I could go to a court over on that podcast, but we would win the case. It's all about Jerry Lawler, at least the Moan one. And I'd be like, he's not bringing that case. He doesn't want to. And I would, by the way, I'd be like, Mr. Lawler, let's do this.
Yeah.
Way more Twitter followers than I do, and I would like some of them.
Yeah, right. You're listening to another episode of the Somewhat Damaged Podcast, part of the Storic Media Podcast Network, and brought to you by Corona Premier, now available on Draft. I've been lucky enough to be backstage at a bunch of stuff, mainly at TNA, when TNA was.
Ooh, fuck you.
No. I'm just going.
I know Bubba the Love Sponge too. Greg.
Oh God.
Whatever. So I did have the opportunity to watch some of these guys, like choreograph their match, right? And it was one of the more interesting things to like watch guys do, because clearly you have to have some, you have to know what's going to happen in some overarching way to coordinate ending, beginning, not necessarily middles, but the key points. And it was super interesting. And I'm taking it back to me saying fake, because there's nothing fake about what these guys do in a ring. Nothing. Like, they are some of the most superb athletes, if not the most superb athletes, like, for the size they are, for what they're able to do in a ring at full speed. It's friggin' insane.
Yeah.
It's
as a fan, John, do you like it when they pull back the curtain a little bit? Like Greg just talked about choreographing matches. There's that YouTube video of Mankind and The Rock choreographing one of their matches.
The I Quit match. Yeah, I don't. It's that weird thing of, it's like, I don't like it as a rule, but I love it when it's done right. You know what I mean? Like, it's that thing of like to use a stand-up analogy. Like, I hate when a comedian stands on stage and goes like, "No, best part of my job, hanging out with you guys." I hate that as a rule, but I love Bert Kreischer, and Bert Kreischer does that more than anyone else. But it's like, but I like it the way he does it. The way he does it, it's great. And that's that same thing of like, I hate when Vince Russo, this is very inside. I hate when Vince Russo does a pull back the curtain reveal angle, but I love when Paul Heyman does it, because Paul Heyman knows how to do it where it's organic and it's interesting. Vince Russo's saying bro and being awful. Like, it's just like,
you want to shoot, cowboy, kind of like that's like, exactly. That's better than Hulk Hogan is no longer welcome here at this. You know what I mean? And just destroying it. I agree with you.
No, but it's like how Paul Heyman won't, when he does Q&As, he doesn't talk about Brock Lesnar. He goes, "I'm not talking about Brock Lesnar because anything Brock Lesnar does, he does for real." Like, Paul Heyman's on record as saying maybe the streak wasn't supposed to be broken that night, and Brock just did it anyway. And you're like, I don't believe that, Paul, but I like that he's still doing it.
Like, I love the shoot and kayfabe sprinkled in as well.
Yeah, that's it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you get what I'm going with that? Where it's like,
I get it. I get it. So do you have a program that, like, listen, and we're talking a little bit more about into getting in depth of wrestling, but is there anything that like, do you appreciate these 24s for like WrestleMania that the network's doing?
Yeah.
Or would you rather see a dark side of the ring?
I would rather see a dark side of the ring, because I think the dark side of the ring is more neutral. They're not pushing an agenda and like, I like some of the documentary stuff the WWE's put out and some of the historical stuff. The problem is the WWE is pushing historical gender. Like, if you look at
Well, they're
any
rewriting
of the stuff,
history.
yeah, they're rewriting. You look at any of the stuff the WWE puts out about WCW, like the WWE is basically, we were cool, calm, collected boys that knew it would all work out versus a bunch of men pissing their pants. Like, it's just like, no, WCW had a better product, was a more interesting show, and they do weird things like the entire discussion of WCW beating WWE is predicated on the NWO, which wasn't true. WCW was already beating the WWE with an angle that no one talks about. That was one of the WCW feud between Macho Man and Ric Flair was the best those two performers have ever been. Like, they did something that was so smart that I hope they never repeat again, but I loved, which was they had a match and it was delayed by 10 minutes because neither man would walk out, because they knew as soon as one walked out, the other one was going to attack them in the entryway. And then finally Ric Flair walks out and Macho Man attacks him in the entryway. Like, it's that perfect sort of going, like, these, like, that's what I love about wrestling the most, is when you can go, I know it's predetermined, I know that this was scripted, but for 1 second, I think they actually dislike each other. Like, it, and Macho Man is so good at it. Ric Flair's, and it's like the height of Ric Flair being a bastard. He's always having dinner by the ring, and literally, like, Macho Man's just showing up in teal tights and attacking him. Like, he threw like, it's so intense, and they were beating WWE in the ratings with that angle before the NWO was even mentioned, and they never talk about it because it was Bischoff doing the smartest thing and going, that feud started in the WWF. They never resolved it because Vince McMahon drops angles. Fuck it, we'll finish it. Yeah. And it's right. It was so good.
And not to mention, I mean, the biggest heel turn before Hogan was the Elizabeth turning on the Macho Man. Like, that was huge.
Yeah, one of the weirdest Hulk Hogan promos ever, where he's talking about the shoe, because how they had them turn was a tag team match, and Elizabeth, you told me that shoe fell off, but I think you took it off your foot, and you're just like, Hulk, I don't think this is the
dude. That is deep, John. That you get into that, you know, like even like the word.
I am irritating on this subject. It gets very annoying because it's like, oh, we're gonna do this. All right, well, come over here to the virginity machine. And it's just like, you have
no idea how excited I get about this, because as a wrestling fan, you know, and it's funny, it's still looked down upon, obviously. But let's talk a little bit more about your comedy career. What are you currently doing now? So you just moved down from Canada. Where in Canada were you actually?
I'm from Ottawa. I moved from England. So I was in, started in Montreal, moved to Toronto, then moved to England for 7 years, then moved to LA end of 2018.
Okay.
Sort of like doing that sort of stuff. So it's this sort of weird mix of, obviously, you know, trying to get into clubs and stuff like that. But then I'm also do a lot of sort of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, sort of hour-long arts festival comedy shows, that, and then also, you know, typical stand-up stuff.
I've always mentioned, and being from a Western comic, you know, and this side of the pond, really, we always talk about these 1 hour shows that literally everybody from Jack Whitehall to Ricky Gervais to writing an hour every single year, and God forbid you do another like the same joke on a show. Like, you're eaten alive for it. How do you break that up here? Like, how do you kind of culminate all that together by doing 5s and 10s and 15s when you don't have like a theater? Like, I see like a lot of guys before Edinburgh, they'll rent out a small space, you know, maybe like 3 towns over, and they'll run for like 2 weeks the same hour over and over. How do you? I mean, nobody's giving hours out in LA, definitely, right?
No. And it's a couple of tricks. So what you do is, and I'm not the best at like every aspect of planning my career. Like, you talk to someone like Jack Whitehall or like those guys that like had like certain things laid out in their head, and it like literally like this to this to this. I've never been that good in detail. But the one thing I knew is I wanted to get out of England, but I like doing Edinburgh. I wanted to live in LA because I love the vibe and the show business of it. And I thought about New York for spots, but I'd already lived in a big gross city, which was London, and I needed a change. So here's what you do in that one, because you know you're right. You're not getting hours brought out. You can't headline on the road. That's the first thing to remember. So what you do is you look at your year as sort of segments of getting ready. So Edinburgh ends in August. So September, you can kind of chill, be in LA, work on stuff. But like at this point, most comedians who do Edinburgh all the time have someone they work with, usually called the director. but they actually are like a producer, like for a band, in that they're not going, take a sip of the cup, your father is dead, emote. What they're doing is going, we need you need to have, these jokes need to be better. What's going to make these jokes better? Like, they're not writing them for you, but they'll sit there and be like, no, this isn't working, that sort of stuff. So you have someone to bounce off of, which cuts down on some of the time. You then you do as many spots as you can, September until December, in New York or in LA. I usually will try and go to New York at some point in that for a couple of weeks, bounce around, do that. January comes, go to England. You can run stuff in a basement for an hour, and you literally take a notepad out, you run it for an hour, that sort of stuff. Usually then what I've done is then put the last year's Edinburgh show to bed, because they'll do a run at Soho Theater, come back to the US, hopefully headline a couple of B and C rooms is where I'm at my level now. And then go to Australia for a month, do the Melbourne, debut the hour there. And fingers crossed it works. If it doesn't, throw everything you have at it to get it to work as fast as possible, because reviewers are coming in, all of that sort of stuff. Come back to LA, headline a bit more, and then go to the UK in July and run it every day of July in what are called Edinburgh previews, and then take it to Edinburgh is how I've done it. And what I like about it is it gives it structure. I also like doing it in 5 and 10 minute spots, because it means that every bit has to work. It also, the thing that is a bit hinky is you have to work on Joe. If you're going to do Edinburgh 1 year, you have to think about it that you have to remove cultural references from it, because even LA to New York, it's different culturally. And then LA to Edinburgh, so different. So that's the main sort of trick to it, is how you just do it. It's
crazy, because like I hear the stories of, like, you know, just working on a 30-minute for, let's say, you know, a Comedy Central showcase or something along those lines. But, you know, there's a lot more that goes into that hour. And the funny thing is that there's a percentile of people in the industry, and actually in the comedic community, that don't consider these kind of Gervais and these UK specials that come out in the hour. They think that Eddie Izzard isn't real stand-up. And my thing is, like, it's such a lost art form. And John, you're kind of pulling that all together, and it's like in this new way. And plus you're doing your podcast and shit like that, and you're going to these rooms and headlining. Like, it's that is the purest art form. And I haven't said this on the podcast yet, Greg, but that is exactly what I think when I think of art form of stand-up comedy. That's precisely it. What John is doing, and kudos to you, man. That's fucking amazing.
Thank you. It's great. All the hours and I was gonna make a joke about how the hours the last 3 years have been terrible using that system, but no, it's one of those ones where it's also like, there's also so much, like, I'm sure you guys have both experienced it, but it's this interesting coming out of COVID, which I hope sort of goes away. But in stand-up the last few years, it was sort of like there was a way you do it. Like, you're in New York, you get passed at all these clubs, you get 3 Conans, then you'll move to LA, and then you will get a special, and then you kind of just sort of hang out in LA for a while, and you say weird stuff in front of the Improv, like, let's make it happen, and then later you die. Like, that was sort of the trajectory. And what I think is sort of happening is people are going, well, why? I don't want to do it that way. Like, it's that sort of thing of like, I want to do it this way. Why do I have? And I think that because of COVID, everyone, and Zoom shows, and everyone had to be a bit more creative. It is going to be that way. Like, the amount of people that have moved to Austin, I think some of them now are doing it just because I think it's the thing to do. But I think it's
doing well, right?
Tony seems to be doing very well. I mean, you know, that let's see what that video does for his career.
Happy API month, everyone.
Oh, like, listen, I say whatever you want. I don't think Tony Hitchcock was racist. I think that was just a really stupid thing. Like, it was just stupid. Like, oh my God, what the fuck were you thinking, man? Like,
I mean, I'm not a fan of Tony's, and I mean, like, I think I see his appeal is, and I don't mind saying this as a booker because I don't care. I'll leave comedy tomorrow. I'll make my $30 somewhere else. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, it was crazy to see that. But yeah, just to back to your point, the path to the quote unquote the promised land is there's so many different ways to go at it. I mean, what's your feelings on TikTokers and Instagrammers?
I mean, like, go nuts, good luck. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to your point of even going, like, just to relate it back to the Tony Hinchcliffe, and for those of you who don't know, and maybe you listened to this years ago, while this is being recorded this week, video of comedian Tony Hinchcliffe was out where he said, like, the craziest things after a
he definitely it was an attack on an Asian American that he doesn't know. Number two, you don't do that to a fellow host. You know what I mean?
That was my thing with it too. Is it's going like, but he's on stage with you. What? Don't fucking do that. Like, it's just like, yeah. It's just.
I get it. Listen. There's like, for example, the Shane Gillis thing. Did I think Gillis did something like, did I think it was offensive? Should he have lost his job over it? Absolutely not. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to be able to separate those things. The biggest thing was like, Tony, like, if you even hear the audience reaction, it's the excitement. But then they're just like, oh, dude, come on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can definitely feel the vibe seep out of the room. And the biggest offense was, don't take down another comedian on the show with you, especially the fucking host.
Yeah, like it's listen, you're hitting me. We are in complete agreement about the whole thing, and it's that weird thing about. I always find these things when I'm a stand-up. I always want to be like, I'm gonna have a different perspective on it, and I need to only speak to comedians about it because it's now gonna make me sound like a crass idiot. But like my things about this are gonna be weird, but actually they are important and will help. But I think that goes to all of it. Here's what I think is going to happen post-COVID, and I think is very good. Is that I'm really hoping people are going to, we're going to stop with this sort of like weird, like, you know, I'm a comedian, man, I'm a bandito. Like, it's just like, shut up. We're men and women with jobs. Go do your job. Here's the way to make the jobs the easiest place. Everyone should feel safe because we're at a job. That's what it should be. And I think COVID is going to help that because I think it's going to have burned off a lot of the tourists. And I think that also from comedians, bookers, podcasters, people around it, people are going to be back doing it because they want to do it. You said it perfectly. You can go make $30 a week somewhere else. You're doing it because you like doing it. Greg, you're a stand-up comedian as well, yes?
No.
No. Oh, I was just because you're on stage at Stand Up New York. I assumed that you were, but it's that thing of as a stand-up, I broke in. You broke it. Yeah, you broke in, set up a green screen in front of that, and then green screen. But it's that thing of. We've had a year where everyone could have made a choice to go do another career. If they're still here, I hope we're all doing it with love and respect for each other and trying to make it as easy and fun as possible. And there's going to be some growing pains. Some people are going to say the craziest racist-y shit after a host, and we're going to see what happens as a result. Like, and I don't want him to lose his gig. Here's what I would like: him never to do that again. Here's the bigger thing that is very funny about show business. I don't think he would nearly have gotten in as much trouble if Tony Hinchcliffe hadn't rubbed so many fucking people the wrong. Because it's the funniest thing about it is everyone did exactly what John does. Goes, now here's the thing I don't like Tony. It is so they're like, I do respect him, very funny, don't like him, and everyone's doing that, and it's like it's the same, and it's the weirdest thing about comedians too, and like comedy is it's like there's a lot more allowance of you're like, yeah, he's a nice, like he's a good guy, and then you're like, he is not a good guy. Like, it's just this funny thing.
And you know, you brought up like I've been back and forth. Obviously, there's some people that attack us on social media, and try to call out flaws that we definitely have there. Specifically, allowing booking people like Aaron Berg and people from Compound Media. But the end of the day is that like I don't necessarily appreciate their humor that they do outside. But the biggest thing is that if you think that that a lot of these comics go on stage and just blast the N-word or racial slurs or just play only on stereotypes and that's their only act, it's not the truth. You know what I mean? There is so much more that they do that allows us to book them. And I don't want to get into it too much because there is a little bit of me, and I'll be honest that like it does hurt that, like somebody like Aaron Berg, who I respect, and I can say like I've been to his house, but it does affect me that he does these things on his radio show that are offensive, But at the same token, as a business person, I have to put him on stage because he will crush every single night and make sure that they go home happy.
That's an interesting. I never even considered it from that angle. That's an interesting sort of way and perspective. Have you ever spoken with someone like Aaron to be like, and actually said that to him?
Yeah, I have a good open relationship with Aaron that I said, like, he has this one where he does an Asian stereotype, and it's the cross-eyed, the teeth and everything. And I said, dude, that's fucking ridiculous.
What are you fucking doing, Aaron? Like, listen, I've known Aaron. I knew Aaron when I started in Toronto. Like, I've known Aaron for years. And sometimes you look at it and you're like, what the Aaron, what the fuck are you doing?
Exactly. Because I know who he is as a person, and listen, I get why a lot of people are painting him in that, right? But at the same time, he's making money off of it. But and somebody said to me the other day on Twitter, said, yeah, but he was nice to me. Yeah, I get it, but at the same token, I know that it hurts a little bit that sometimes I have to put people like that on stage. It pains me to put somebody like Jerry Seinfeld on stage when he walks in the club because I don't like him as a person. I think that he's funny. There's I'll be honest with you, there's people that we put on stage because we have to, that I don't like their comedy, but we know that it does well. At the end of the day, that allows me to run somebody like you who's coming out from LA a 60-minute set because I just sold out Saturday night. So I can take a lower ticket sale, for somebody coming in from LA that's only going to do 40% of the room or 50% of the room on a Wednesday night. I can support that. So yeah, it's a lot of learning and growing to do.
But what I do, and I hate this. This has been so fun. I have to run in a second.
No.
But what I do, and I just to say your point, which I do actually, and it makes me very hopeful for the future. I don't like that I'm in a business where people have to go, well, he crushes, but I fucking hate some of the other stuff he does or she does. It's a blanket thing, not to single out Aaron. But what I do like is that there is a dialogue about it, and I do think we're going to move forward from this. I do think that in general things are going to get better. It's not because I think that people are coming out the other side and are hopefully going to get some empathy. There are going to be some dark corners forever, and it's just going to be that sort of thing. But I think moving forward, it is going to get better, and I think people are going to. It's less and less and less. It's also been brought out of the fact, I think, that Trump being president, and it was this whole thing of we can go and needle the libs. That's where I think all of that comes from. And I think that that's going to go away because it's not going to be as culturally important. Am I going to be right about this completely? Probably not. Are there going to be comedians still saying really fucked up shit? Yes. Is John just going to walk out during the podcast?
No. I was my charger's dying. That's why.
That's him
I don't have
telling
to
me.
anymore, Hastings. I'm fucking out.
That's how we end it.
Yeah.
We just each of us just eventually just walks off.
Yeah, welcome to the Aaron Berg just bursts through all of our individual screens.
Yeah, and let's bring him out, actually, Greg. Can we?
Yeah. Aaron? It's so fun. It's
You got to get him a step stool.
But does anyone? This is the last thing that I have to hilariously go.
Go, please.
Talk about Aaron Berg. Too, I have to go then talk to a school. But here's the one thing that I do think that is so interesting, and I do like, is that people are naming names in this situation, and it's not coming from a place of fuck that guy, but it's like, here is an example of what we're talking about moving forward, which I think is actually, because for years no one would say the names on podcasts, and there wouldn't be an open discussion, and then it would become this whole thing of like, well, maybe this person, maybe that, and it's just like one of those things where it's like, no, let's actually say it, and it's like, I think Aaron's such an interesting example too, because I'm sure that he is someone that it also was probably impacted his career, those characters and stuff like that. Because some people are going, I don't care if he crushes, I'm not having him in my room. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, when I see people doing that sort of stuff, I see people like leaning into the MAGA of it all or the anti-mask stuff. I'm always like, this is a trend that's going to go away, but you're still going to be here. Like, you have to sort of think like, how is this going to age? Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be, we always like Sam Kinnison's a legend because he died. Sam Kinnison would have been the saddest, weirdest headliner in 2021. Oh my God. I think about that all the time. I think he would have been decapitated in 2017.
It's unbelievable, but you're absolutely right. But I think the open discussion is there, and John, you bring a great thing, a great idea, and you're bringing back that kind of that you can build your own path, which I love, and it actually is the class path on how to kind of make it, and you're running it. whenever you're in New York, we'd love to have you, my friend. You know that.
John.
So.
Oh, you'll be getting a fun comedian, the semi-organic follow-up email as soon as the pod. John, great to see you. Just to let you know the dates I'm in town. Good, yeah, you know what I mean. Just happened to run into you at a place I don't live that you do specifically. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go this. What? And then can I just ask this of John because he's a booker and I'm fascinated. What is the weirdest way a comedian has emailed you to try and get spots? Like, what's the weirdest subject line? What's the weirdest attempt they've done to try and get spots?
I'm dying. And it was to get on stage because they found out that they had cancer and they wanted to try stand-up comedy. It was the weirdest that I've ever gotten. And I pursued it because there's a little bit of my heart that's like, maybe he's telling the truth. And we booked him, and to my own credit and to my own tenacity, I booked him on a bringer show.
He's still alive.
I booked him on a bringer show.
That's a booker right there. That is you know what? Here's the difference, by the way, between a good comedy club booker and a bad comedy. Any comedy club booker putting that person on a bringer show, good booker admits it. Bad booker goes, I had no idea it was a bringer show.
Never showed up, but neither did his friends.
Well, John, I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to leave in John's question. I'm going to take out your answer because then you're going to, and me, you will ultimately get me flooded with emails also of.
I love it.
And then you're going to be put in a position of having to choose whose life you're going to save.
I mean,
I don't want that on my head.
I would say you have to know the cancer.
Yeah.
Pancreas, you're getting on stage. Prostate, mate, you got 5 years. Go do some open mics in Brooklyn for 1.5 years, then come with the good chemo material. You know what I'm saying?
Any hair loss? If there's hair loss, like that's gonna at least get like 3 applause for that.
Yeah, you're doing that thing where just some of your nails have fallen off, which is a weird thing I learned about a friend having chemo, where you're just like, oh my.
Oh my god, I want to be like your best friend now because you're like wrestling and like I love the conversation we've been having. Where can we find you on social media, man?
You can hit me up at the John Hastings on all social medias and find me on Twitch, John Hastings Comedy, where I do Twitch stream Sunday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We will see you there.
Amazing. One last question, really quick. What was the best thing you ate this week?
I can tell you that I had a salt bagel breakfast sandwich. Now you want to poach that egg if you're in a restaurant. I was at home, fried egg, phenomenal. Can't do it. Guys,
very good.
Thanks, John.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to run off. This was
go. This is awesome. Thanks, John.
I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much.